Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Brian Christman. Today I want to talk about the introduction to my book, the first volume of my series, my Kierkegaardian reading of the Gospel of Mark. This introduction basically explains the title and the subtitle, and so I want to do that today. And there's actually three little sections. I'm going to divide this into three little videos in this introduction. The title is Behold My I can't remember my own title. Behold my mother and my brethren. And the beginning of the gospel and becoming a Christian in post-Christendom. Now I divide that, in my introduction I talk about three different things here that are to do with the subtitle. I'll get to the title in a second here, but the subtitle about becoming a Christian in post-Christendom, and the beginning of the gospel part is just that this covers Mark chapters 1 to 4. It's the beginning of the gospel. It talks about the beginning of the gospel in Mark chapter 1. It says the beginning of the gospel, I think, is the first line. But the becoming a Christian in post-Christendom part, I divide into three parts here in my introduction. Becoming a Christian in Christendom, becoming a Christian in post-Christendom, and becoming a Christian in Kierkegaardiandom, which is a term that I dreamed up, invented, Kierkegaardiandom, and I'll explain that in another video here. So the title itself, where does that come from? It comes right from directly the Gospel of Mark, the King James Version, Behold my mother and my brethren. It's from Mark chapter 3, and it says, and this is into my introduction, and his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside they sent to him and called him. And a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, Your mother and your brothers are outside, seeking you. And he answered them, Who are my mother and my brothers? Looking around at those who sat around him, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. Now, of course, this is talking about Jesus. When he says, Here are my mother and my brothers, that I read the English Standard Version. The King James Version says, instead of here are my mother and my brothers, says a little more boldly, Behold my mother and my brethren. Now, brethren is an archaic term. It's from the King James Version. I kind of went with it because of the King James. I like the ring of it. I'm using the King James in all the titles of the 4 volumes, so I wanted to have some consistency there, and I just went with the King James. And yeah, it's archaic, but, brethren or brothers, I thought I'd go with the brethren here. At any rate, and this is not a sexist thing, because Mark goes on to say, Whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and my sister and mother. So he's not just saying only men are disciples, or his relations. He's saying whoever does the will of God is his brother and sister and mother. So he's not excluding anyone here. And what's interesting here is two things. So I want to talk about this first part about becoming a Christian in Christendom. Christendom is like, if you're born in a country like Denmark, where Kierkegaard was, and this was his main concern, was becoming a Christian in Christendom. Well, in Denmark, if you were born in Denmark, you were a Christian. Denmark was a high point of Christendom in the mid-1800s. Kierkegaard wanted to really follow the Gospel of Mark and say, well, just being born here doesn't make you a Christian. So he goes to Mark and says, whoever does the will of God, he's my brother and sister and mother. So, Christendom's like this big family of God. You're born in Denmark, it's a big family of God. Well, Kierkegaard said, no, whoever does God's will is his brother and sister and mother. Well, that's what Mark said, but I think Kierkegaard believed in that, and I seek to show that. And so there's two things here. Number one is, it is, in a sense, leaving one family, this kind of homogenous family, this crowd of everybody's a Christian, just by being born here, this big happy family. Well, that's not the case in any country, that everyone is just a Christian. So it's leaving that family, this ambiguous family, this, crowd is another term that I use and Kierkegaard used, the herd, the masses. He wasn't afraid to say that the Christians in Christendom were a herd, a crowd, a mass of numbers. They were just following the crowd. That's not being an individual, which was a huge thing with Kierkegaard. So number one, but you leave that family to become another family, a new family of God, the actual family of God, which is based on those who do God's will. That's how you become this family. But it is a family in relation. It's not just, oh, I believe in God, so I'm just going to go to heaven when I die, or I'm something, I'm just an individual going to heaven. Well, you come into a relation. You come into a family where there's brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. And this is not literal, but it's, anybody who's in, people in churches, they say, hey, brother, hey, sister, consider the older people their mothers and fathers. So, you may lose your nuclear family, your actual family you were born in, if you become a Christian. This happens in many countries today, even in America, but especially in Muslim countries or Jewish countries. You become a Christian, you're dead to them. Well, you gain another whole family. I'm not saying it's a great thing to lose your family, but that's the way it is. If you want to do God's will, you may encounter that, but you will gain a family, a new family. So another aspect of this here about Christendom and family, becoming a Christian in Christendom, well, previous to this account in Mark that I just read, his family, his actual mother and brothers came to get him because, and they said, he's out of his mind. He had been going around, he got all the 12 disciples, he was casting out demons, gathering all these crowds. It was like chaos. There was nowhere to stand in the house or, but anyway, they came and they came to seize him, it says. They came to take him home because saying he was out of his mind. Well, in that instance, the actual family of Jesus, and this was Mary, and I don't know if Joseph was there. He may have, people think that he may have died early on, but at any rate, they came to seize him and to take him home. Well, that's the domestication of Jesus. They personify Christendom in that sense. They personified the Jewish world of that sense. They would like to domesticate Jesus into their image of what they want him to be the expected one of the established order. These are things I get into more in the book, but a civilization, a country, a culture has expectations, and they love some expected one that would come and really solve all their problems and, make everything the way they want it to be according to their criteria for what a glorious expected order would be or an established order should be. And so they wanted Jesus to be the expected one. Well, at this point, his families wanted him to be the expected one of not being crazy. And so come home and be a normal person, So, but they personify in that sense Christendom and how Christendom would like to domesticate Jesus and make him, bow to them, to their standards. Actually, Jethro Tull, if any of you are, I'm kind of a 60s, 70s rock guy. Jethro Tull had a song called My God on their famous album Aqualung, and they say about Jesus, made him bend to your religion. That Christendom made Jesus bend to its religion. So obviously that's not good. That's not what Jesus intended. Jesus would not be domesticated, he would not go home with his mother and brothers who thought he was crazy. Instead, he pointed to the people around him who were following him and doing his will, and he said, behold, my mother and my brethren. That's his family, his mother, brother, sister, father. And that's where the title comes from, and that's a little bit on becoming a Christian in Christendom. which was Kierkegaard famously wrote a book that became titled The Attack on Christendom. He attacked that because a domesticated Jesus is not what Christianity is meant to be, what the gospel was meant to bring. So Kierkegaard was all about reintroducing Christianity to Christendom, reintroducing the gospel to Christianity. Sometimes he didn't even like the term Christianity, but at any rate, most of the time he did use Christianity. It's possibly even to the point today where Christianity has lost some of its meaning because it just means cultural Christianity or cultural Christendom. And the gospel is about the real thing, about the gospel of the kingdom of God that Jesus embodied and lived and brought for his followers to also live and bring. So hopefully, I know that was kind of a lot. It took a little longer than I expected, but I will supplement this with 2 more videos on the rest of this introduction, becoming a Christian in post-Christendom, becoming a Christian in Kierkegaardiandom. So hope to see you soon. Thanks for tuning in, so to speak.